Thank you, Dr. Shalini, for inviting me, and very excited to be in this panel. For example, it's a very befitting keynote by Professor Sarkar, laying down the big problems and then the approach one has to take if you are a social media researcher or researcher interested in using social media data. What I would like to do in next 8 minutes or so that I have is essentially talk about two sides of the same coin, which is social media aspects, right? One is on the positive side. We should always remember that social media has made so many changes in our lives. It actually changed the way that we live, change the way that we behave, change the way we make decisions, and so on. For example, the way search engines have made an impact in Web 1.0 time in terms of making huge amount of information accessible to us by arranging it well and then making it accessible to us. Search engines did that for Web 1.0. Then social media platforms have done that for Web 2.0, which is essentially social web. And then it actually connected us never like before in terms of making giving an opportunity for us to express ourselves, our opinions, our sentiments, our emotions, and then also connecting with people whom we would have physically never possible to meet, and then kind of have certain strong bondings, just all virtual, and then several possibilities which were not there before. All of them are actually happened because of these great platforms. At the same time, they have also told us one important aspect, which kind of very, very important. They tell us what people think. Okay, this is a very fundamental question, and as human beings, we're always curious about what others think. And then social media platforms have made it possible to let us know about the pulse of the people, the wisdom of the masses in a very unprecedented way. Um, especially coming back to the question of what people think about the topics that I care is an important question for an individual to ask, for organizations to ask, for societies and countries also to ask. That will actually expand the possibilities for us. For example, at an individual level, if I would like to buy a phone, I would like to know what others think about the particular model that I'm thinking about buying. And as an organization, I would like to know what people think about the products and services that I'm offering. And then at the society level, we would like to know what are the aspirations of the community that we live in. What does Bangalore people think are the major problems that need to be addressed in the city infrastructure? That's an important insight or opinion one can get from by asking these questions on what people think. And then the second, at the country level also, we would like to know what are the issues that are relevant to our country, our society, and so on. So at various levels, these questions are possible. And I mean, the answers to these questions are possible because we have platforms like these today. So this is a very important element that all of us should be aware in terms of understanding the power of social media that gives us, right? And then this power, the new power that we got, also told us about great correlations between what social media is and what real world is. One statement that I would like to make is that one can actually evaluate the merit of it based on one's experience and then kind of logical thinking. The statement is social media is a good proxy to the real world. So what do I mean?
Yeah, we lost you for a few seconds.
I'm sorry, maybe I'll repeat. The question that I wanted to pose is, or rather the statement that I would like to pose is, social media is a good proxy to the real world. So what do I mean by that? Of course, good proxy is something that actually gives us a great model a great simulator to understand the real world, which is very, very complex. So as a researcher, you would like to do your experiments on something that is a bit more smaller, simpler, and then derive your analysis, your predictions, your conclusions, and then you project it back to the real world. If most of them stay intact, if they are valid, then it becomes a good proxy. And then we have a whole lot of fields in which this statement is true. For example, the correlation between the stock market and the real market, or rather the talks, the conversation that are happening in social media about stocks and then companies, and then their correlation that exists in the real world. For example, there was a service called Tweet Trader that looks at all the conversations that are happening only on Twitter, just one platform, and tries to assign a sentiment value for each one of the conversations that are happening. And if the sentiment is positive, the score is made +1. If the sentiment is negative, the score is made -1. And then if a graph is kind of created based on this, say, time series data, and then very interestingly, this graph has very huge amount of correlation with the real graph of the stock price movement for that particular company. And more interestingly, this graph precedes the real graph. In other words, you have the power to predict what is going to be the stock price. And then, of course, there is a disclaimer that nobody should try this unless you want to really risk your money. But there's an evidence that some of these techniques in specific domains like stock markets will be able to tell us, give us the power to predict what is going to happen later. And similarly, in elections is a great domain where social media power is being proved time and again, starting from 1996 till now 2020. Several elections have exploited the social media platforms, not just in understanding what people think, also in deploying the limited resources, especially in the swing states, where one can influence the opinions of people by having a proper campaign. Not only that, moving forward, also to actually find out what kind of topics need to be kind of brought into the campaign, and then how they need to be kind of packaged, and what to be spoken at what place at what time. All these aspects actually are learned from social media, right? Text from conversations in social media. Of course, the political strategists have used it in an immense manner, where now the election outcomes also can be changed, and we are all actually seeing all of that, not just in US, in Singapore, Malaysia, India, Burma. No matter where you are, you can see this kind of a correlation between what exists and what can be brought into social media and what is really coming in. And that is where we have like a great correlation between what exists in the social media world and what exists in the real world. Remember, number of people who exist in social media, talk about things in social media, is a minuscule, uh, you know compared to all the people in real world. But why social media has become such an important tool for every political party, for every nation, to understand or to influence elections, that is, all of us need to think about that very seriously. And in short, I can always tell about more correlations in product launches, in movies, and success of everything. There's a lot of correlation between what insights that we can get in social media and what things really are in real world, right? Now, I just wanted to summarize what we are benefiting from social media. That's only one phrase I would like to say. That is the instant social insight. So we get the insight of the society, entire population, right? That is valid in real world. And then we get that instantly. And never before in our history that we had such a technological tool, or a technology stack that would give us this kind of a power, right? So what do we do in order to achieve that goal? Is we have the infrastructure, technology infrastructure, to recognize sentiments, opinions, emotions, and attitudes. All these are loaded terms in social media research. I don't have time to expand on them, but I just wanted to mention that all these, uh, you know, all these human aspects are being recognized about everything that we care: people, places, products, services, movies, all those, from the entire user generated data, from blogs, from microblogs like Twitter, or the news comments. At the end of the news, there's always a lot of comments that are given by the readers. So those comments, all the reviews that we find, like, so entire social media, entire, the place where the entire corpus where that is being generated by the humans, right? User generated content. It is our new UGC, right? And all of that completely automatically and in real time. And that actually provides us equips us with the analytics that can help us make decisions and also take actions. So in short, what I'm saying is the positive side of this is we get instant social insight, which is very, very important. And then, of course, there are fine-grained aspects of figuring out public opinion, expert opinion, and then distinguishing between authoritative sources and non-authoritative sources to find out essentially all these things that I talked about: sentiments, opinions, emotions, attitudes, etc., about the topics, events, and any specific object that would have. It will help in computing the social influence, computing the sentiment, computing the opinions, and so on, right? So for this, we have the actually three aspects of the technology part of it that we need to care about. One is social media monitoring. Second one is social listening, and third one is what I would like to call as social intelligence, right? You can imagine the size of all the data that is being produced every day in around 250 major social media platforms. So ability to monitor all these conversations in real time is a technological challenge. For a computer science scientist, it's something like creating a new marvel of engineering, like say in Golden Gate Bridge or something like that, where you are creating an infrastructure, an architecture that is monitoring this huge amount of data that has all the the features of not just big data but humongous data, right? So that is one aspect. The second one is social listening, where you have all this data, but you have to have the ability to listen to it. In other words, you are understanding what is really happening there. So you need to use lots of natural language processing, understanding all the expressions, idioms to the frozen expressions, to metaphors, to irony, sarcasm, many of those things that would be part of the social listening exercise. You need to equip yourself as a social media researchers with all these tools: natural language processing, deep learning, machine learning, etc., right? Then you have the ability to listen to this data. And third is the social intelligence, right? This is where you have the ability to predict, analyze things, infer data, and predict things. And a lot of things have been said about the social intelligence in the past, but then what really makes it very hard is most of the social media is very noisy, right? The social media data is very noisy. It's noisy because, when everybody is a writer or the creator of the content, then all our abilities, inabilities come into forefront. For example, it's very hard to find correct spellings, and then, or correct grammar is even, like too much to expect from social media posts. So all the spelling errors and spelling variations, all of us are very creative when it comes to expressing, especially the named entities, in terms of our spelling variations, right? For example, famous example is Britney Spears is actually being written in at least 26 ways of valid, statistically significant spelling variations, right? Then there are many issues, like there is a short forms, semantic equivalents are used uh, in plenty. in social media posts. And then there are these hashtags which are actually meant for human consumption, but actually it makes it very hard to semantically interpret hashtags. A lot of sarcasm and negations, those are to be detected. And there are a bunch of other things which I'm not going to get into because of the time constraints. For example, there's a famous messenger and message problem to distinguish what is the message and who is the messenger. And then where do you want to compute your sentiment on? Not on the messenger, but on the message, right? So that distinction is very important. Understanding global prior sentiment, that is also very, very important. And most importantly, understanding what is social media spam. So these are all the bunch of problems that we have. And then this is where we have challenges in understanding social media data and segmenting it properly, and then have solutions to actually address each one of these problems, right? So that is more about how do you conduct social media research if you are planning to use the data that is coming from social media. Again, Dr. Sarkar earlier mentioned about the reproducibility of results. In social media data, it becomes very, very hard, as he mentioned, because if you actually take some data cutting across time and space, and then you infer certain conclusions, results from that data, and then if you cut across the in a different time and space the similar data, then the conclusions may be completely wrong, right? So hence it's very, very important to understand these variations, the very fluctuating aspects of inferences one can get from social media. So I'll just take 30 seconds to conclude. So like fake news and all other toxic content that is there in social media is very hard to handle. There are several solutions, but most important thing is understanding this information uh, misuse, all, and also the toxic content, hate speech, sexism, many of these aspects. Now people are beginning to understand the problem in its core. It's actually very important to know that computer science cannot alone solve this. It needs help from other disciplines such as sociology, social psychology, and so on. And then many solutions that are coming up are based on these kind of a collaborations. So long way to go, but it's very exciting area to work on. And I'll be happy to take some questions later on. Thank you for your attention and time.